Anyway, back to it. Like I was saying,
Awesome.
was the baldness and the shaving of the head.
The boldness. Yeah.
It's just around that area. I
Mm.
had the short back and sides. I used to have a short back and sides haircut, old military style. I was going to the hairdressers and I kept asking for the short back and sides. Eventually, she said to me one day, "There's not much going on the top there, is there?" I was like, "Fuck." She's got a point. Actually, it was all wispy. I paid for the haircut, went home and shaved it off. That was years ago, and I've stuck with it since. So you shave it. If you shave it, you do it voluntarily. I don't. Mine's a has to.
Look, it looks quite good, to be honest.
Thank you.
I think
I pull it off.
if you tally up all the savings, probably
It was worth it, wasn't it?
yeah.
Mind
you,
the raises I've gone through, mine I don't know.
you probably could buy all the stuff around you right now.
Well done. All on my baldingness. I should have called it
Exactly.
the balding man's podcast. Huh?
Right, I'm welcomed by Leighton. Leighton is founder of 20 Talk. We'll hear more about that in a minute. It's to do with mental health awareness. How did you get into the mental health side of it? As a young man, it intrigues me that someone's so aware of it and has gone to such lengths to make people aware.
That's a really good question.
Just come into the mic a bit, mate.
Yeah. It is a very big question, and I think there's not, like you said, it is surprising to a lot of people the fact that there's a bunch of guys out there
Yep.
that are putting other people in front of themselves, which is yeah, it's very surprising to a lot of people. But I'll tell you a little bit about why we kind of went down that road, and I think it comes from both internal and external things.
Yep.
I guess about a couple of years ago, 2 years ago now, one of our friends was actually committed suicide due to a bit of drug use and a lack of community. He didn't really have a connection to people. He didn't have an outlet. He didn't have a space where he could go and talk to people and vent.
How long ago was this?
This is about a year and a half ago now.
Right, okay.
Looking into the next year after that, next month, sorry, another one of our close friends passed away. And I guess...
Was the second one suicide as well?
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the guys that was standing next to us in the funeral for the first one, I wasn't actually as close to both of these people. The first one I was kind of close with, but a lot of the guys in our mentoring group were actually very close to these guys, and it had a profound effect on them. One of our mentors, Lockie, we all went to his house one day, the night of the passing of of our first friend Kai, and there was just an extremely heavy presence in the air. Like, there's this weight to the air. Do you ever get that? Like,
I know what you mean.
it's just, you look at someone and you could slice the air. Like, it's just, you could feel the weight. Anyway, so we felt the weight, and we're all sitting around a big fire, and there was about maybe 20 of us people there, all friends of Kai, all pretty shaken up, as you could. Yeah, it was just really full on. And I guess one of the things that happened was my friend Lockie, he said to us all, we can't let this happen again. We're all going through trials. We're all going through tribulations. We weren't expecting this, and we need to do something about it. And that moment just is burnt into my memory, and for good reason. And I guess that's kind of one of the reasons it started. Another one is just, I guess we're just sick of the way how society is structured in a way. Everything's really centered around consumerism. It's centered around yourself. We try to fill these voids within our hearts with objects.
Yep.
We want the next best thing. And when we get there, we feel exactly the same. When we make ourselves the center of the universe through Instagram, or we just promote ourselves as this God in a way, we're left feeling empty time and again. And I guess we kind of understood that, and we wanted to do something about it. So we all just come together, seven guys initially. We started meeting at my house. We started discussing ways and procedures of how we could feel our hearts and how we could feel our souls, how we could feel and live a life that's worth living, not just running away from our problems. But yeah, that's just some of the reasons. A lot more to it.
So how old was your friend?
When you committed suicide.
I think he would have been around 20 at the time,
Wow.
21.
And are you aware of what?
What the problems were? But at 20, it's Jesus, that's young.
Yeah, it is. It's young, and I guess they get younger and younger, but I'm not 100% sure on the reasons. I can speculate them,
Yeah,
but it's
okay.
not something I would like to
It's-
publicly say.
I can sympathise with it. I've had friends commit suicide myself. As far as I'm aware, it was done post-military tours of Iraq, come back, never the same again. And the thing that got me the hardest about all that was that I was still real good friends with these guys. I say guys, I think we've lost. I remember somebody posted up. I think there's 20 so far this year, ex-servicemen in the UK alone, have committed suicide. And the guys that I knew this happened to, I still spoke to them. And one that sticks out in my mind is Spencer Bynum. I spoke to him days before, and then a phone call came from his girlfriend. She rang me up while I was still living up here, and said what had happened. And the thing that got me was anger as well, because I'm very approachable. I thought, if you have problems, you always used to come and sort of talk and say, "Oh, you're a kind of influence on me, Greg. It's he's a crazy, crazy guy." I say crazy, I don't mean doolally. I mean just his whole persona. The way, everything he did was 110%. And I know I'm not really good at percentages, but 100% of everything that the guy did. And it was angering for me to think that he didn't call or he didn't reach out, because he was such a popular guy. There were so many people around him, and he just didn't have that enough extrovert, I suppose, to turn up, put your hand up and say, "Fuck this, I'm struggling. Somebody help me."
It's interesting. Sometimes the people that you suspect the least are the people that are suffering the most.
Yep.
Because they use this extroverted nature as a mechanism to feel like they're going okay, or that they're doing all right. They tell their friends, they put on this happy personality, and none of their friends would even understand. They're actually sometimes the people you need to look out for. And like you said you got angry that he didn't reach out to you. And I think one of the things we always do is we get angry at people for not sharing with us. But before we get angry, we must realize, like, are we actually sharing with them? Were you sharing with him?
No, nothing that anything that I've ever felt, or the little bouts of depression that I've had. No, I didn't. And I didn't share with him because he wasn't immediately around me, and it's probably exactly the same for him. But I think it's the emotion. I didn't know what to
do with the emotion of it. I was angry at him for doing it. And then it's easy to say in hindsight, why the hell did you speak out? Why didn't you give me a shout? Why didn't you FaceTime me, call me, do something? We spoke a couple of weeks ago. Why didn't you say you were struggling? And then when I was talking to his missus, she was telling me he was struggling for weeks, and you could sort of see something bad was going to happen. So those thoughts go through your head, but it's all good in hindsight. At the time, we're all dealing with our fast-paced lives, and maybe I wasn't presenting myself as I thought I might have been in order to come forward. I don't know. I'll never know. But it's just these are the emotions that you go through. When someone does something like that, it's not like losing a relative, which I've had done. It's a completely different feeling when someone takes their life. If a family member's ill, they pass away. It's like a rational thought comes across you. It's sort of the process of life, isn't it? You live, do what you got to do. One day you get old and die. Hopefully, that's the way it goes, painlessly in your sleep. When someone young, he was, Spence was 40 by the time he did it, but someone young at 20, geez, what the hell is wrong? What's wrong with society that pushes people at 20 to feel like they're going to take their life. And was it society that pushed them? There's lots of different reasons why people get depressed. But society does push. I think the way it is at the minute, like you said earlier before we went on air, how Facebook and Instagram, and you're not on Facebook. I applaud that.
Yeah, well, not. We have a page, but
Yeah.
It's
for certain things as a necessity, like this, and the amount of endless time I scroll through it. And sometimes I scroll through for so long, I start to get pissed off. I'm getting pissed off for doing this on my phone. I think it's incredibly sad. I applaud you for not having it.
yeah, I think.
But there's pressures on people through these medias, and they're not. A lot of things are negative. There's a lot of good that can come from it, but it's so easy to find a negative. The negative is always slam bang in the face. The positive is hard to find. People post up a meme that maybe that they didn't come up with of celebrity's face and such said this. That's about as positive as some people can get. The majority of it is negative. And if you look at something positive, you look through the comments, I guarantee you'll find 100 negative comments because it's the easy target for people to go to. So for 20-year-olds to do it, it boggles my mind and it upsets me that it happens because there's so much life ahead of them. But I don't know. I don't know what to say about that. But 20 is mind-boggling.
Yeah, I think when someone passes away, I've said this before, you really start to understand what's important. You start, like, your whole schema, your whole set of beliefs really gets laid down to what's true.
Yep.
For example, you'll find a lot of people after there's a death that, you know, they start connecting to their friends. They start to think about what should they actually be doing in their life. Some people even look to spiritual means as well.
I think
one of the key takeaways from the passing away of Kai and the passing away of Tom is you should try and live almost like someone has just passed away, and to get that feeling that you have after the death and to hold on to that and to live every moment like that. And I think that's one of the things we've been trying to do, to not just be upset with the way that the current society is, but to actually just do something, because it's never going to be perfect. But as long as we're just trying our best, like we're making so many mistakes, we're making heaps, but we're moving forward nonetheless. And I think it's very essential for something like this to happen. And I think there's still some other people doing things like it, but there's a lot of room for improvement. The stuff out there, I'm not sure if you're aware, but you got like Beyond Blue and all these larger corporate kind of entities still have the heart for people, but the size of them has rendered them ineffective in some facets. Like a big company like Beyond Blue would not be able to connect to young people in a way that we do. I'm not trying to like sell us, but we're both different. We're both different and we have different functions. But I think like 20 Talk can really get in there because you're not looking up to a different entity. It's not like you're looking up to a psychologist or you're looking up to a counselor. We're a person just like you who's suffering and making mistakes. And I guess that's a big reason why people are really enjoying it, because they don't have to take ownership that they're in a bad position. 20 Talk is actually centered mainly around helping people to become better people. We're not out there to help, you know, the 2% that are like in a dangerous position. That's something we really need to be careful with, because you're playing with fire when you're dealing with people that are really suicidal. One of the things that we're encouraged to do, and we've had advice on this, is any kind of sign of people going down that dark road, we're passing them off to recommended people, because we're not professionals and we're not admitting that we know everything. We're just there to journey with you. We're there to love you and just be an ear to hear your problems. One of my friends actually was saying to me yesterday that people don't want advice. They just want an ear to hear, and they just want someone to listen to their problems. And I think that's a really effective way of helping people learn, because when you're talking and you're expressing your feelings, you're connecting a lot of dots in your own brain and you're helping yourself grow in a way that you don't even understand. So yeah, that's a really big thing.
There's so many, if you say people call you up, do they? And they can actually
call 20 Talk.
No, we have open night. So
broken into two sections, or three now actually. So we have our core members, which is about
7 guys, 8 actually, including me. And we've been
on for about a year.
Yep.
And
we actually developed a
mentoring program over that time. So we were experiencing a lot of growth within ourselves. We're learning our values, learning where we're going in life, and we wanted to share that with other people. So over that period of time, we developed a 5-week program, and we've been doing a lot of research on that, like so much research. And we I'll give you a little bit of a rundown on what that is. So personally, I did quite a lot of reading on a lot of psychological stuff, a lot of philosophy, even a bit of spiritual stuff as well. And I was looking for an answer to why we feel so empty sometimes, and why life isn't quite as good as, the movies say they are, or you know what I mean. And because I was feeling empty myself, coming out of a little dabble of depression from drug use, and I guess I wasn't really in an optimal environment in terms of my friendships, and that wasn't actually because of them, that was mainly because of me. But yeah, we were looking for an answer to why we felt so empty. And one of the things I started to realize was there's a reoccurring theme through all these books, all these TEDx videos, these scriptures, these speeches. All of them have a similar kind of reoccurring theme. And the first, so there's essentially three core things that what we feel addresses this void within our soul that actually brings us to a wholesome state of mind, and can help us not only help ourselves, but to express and build other people in the process. So the first one is direction. So helping yourself to understand where you actually, what your goal on this earth is. So an important thing, on my way here, I was listening to a podcast, and there was a philosopher called Nietzsche or something. Someone's going to know who this is, and I probably pronounced it wrong, but he said, those that have a why can bear any how. So the people who know where they're going, the people who have a direction, a dream, a goal that is so high, so grand, he used the word grand, those are the people who are going to be able to overcome any obstacle. They're going to be able to help other people. They're going to be able to create a life worth living. So that was one of the things we kept seeing. It's important to have a dream. It's important to be searching for something. The next thing we kind of saw that was a reoccurring theme, kept coming up, was identity. So knowing who you are, knowing your values, what lines won't I cross? That's a really big one, and that's something.
I was just going to say that, because people don't do that.
Oh no. So, like self-awareness.
Self-assessment is a word that I use quite a lot.
Yeah, self-assessment is it's a process. It's a state of mind that we all need to do more of. And we need to do a lot more of it, because when you're assessing your problems, you're assessing your weaknesses, you're growing at such a high level, so much more than you could ever have. Like, for example, I never used to be self-aware until a year ago.
Yep.
When I got a kick up the arse from a friend who basically made me realize how much of I was a surface dweller. I was just pottering along. And
man, I'm so guilty of doing that as well. And I think I was in my 30s before I stopped being an arsehole. And I'm still an arsehole. I'm just not as big an arsehole as I used to be.
It's important to be an arsehole. Yeah. Some ways, but yeah.
At least everyone needs one.
So understanding who you are, and that plays a lot into confidence. So this affects your confidence at such a high level. And I was actually talking to the same person that gave me the kick up the arse on the way here. I was on the phone to them, and they were saying, we're talking a bit about the 20 Talk program, and how in one of the things that we do is we we get the mentees to assess what their core values are. So we have a big list of values, and we say, you know, what's 7 values that you can really identify with? And myself included, we'll pick 7 values. And what we were discussing is the values that you actually pick, the person that you identify with is actually not who you are as a person. It's the ideal of who you want to be. So yeah, is a big...
Say that bit again for me.
the person that you want to... Oh, gee, I forgot what I said.
The person that you identify as is not the person that you are. It's the person that you want to be.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's one of the things we kind
Damn, son, that's deep.
Yeah. Yeah. So what does that mean?
Damn. That takes some thinking about, doesn't it?
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So we kind of depict ourselves as these people, but in reality, you know, we're a totally different person. One of the things we talked about was a good way to grasp who your real identity is who are you under pressure? So what kind of person are you going to be when I'm putting stress on you, when I'm putting you in an environment where your values are going to be challenged, because you can really see yourself in a raw state of mind.
Yeah. When you say challenge someone, that could come down physically, mentally.
Mm-hmm.
So people will respond differently for either. I'm going to leave the camera off onto you for a sec, because people are saying it's muffly when I transfer it to me. But yeah, if you challenge someone physically, the responses are different if you pressure them mentally. Does that make sense to you?
Well, it'd be interesting to get your opinion, coming from an army background, how that transpires. What is a person like under pressure? How do their values warp? How do they change in an environment where they are challenged?
Well, the challenge is there. When you say someone changes, it's very easy for someone to change and under pressure go kill someone. Well, they wouldn't do that in everyday life, but that's something that's a requirement. So that's an extreme level. The majority of your time in the military, the challenges are more physical. Apart from having to put up with the amount of bullshit that comes with being in the military, the challenges, they go to different levels, and how you deal with them. So it's quite an open question. So if you want to put someone in the harshest extremes of Iraq, where the challenges are the heat, the dehydration, you got roadside bombs, you got people taking pot shots at you, you're losing friends, to being back in the UK on Salisbury Plain doing something physical as a challenge. So that's what I mean by when I said to you the challenges of something physical to something mental to something.
But in terms of when you're put in a position where you're under stress, for example, I'm trying to word this correctly, but
it's quite
for
hard.
example, if someone had integrity in the UK and they were a very integral person, and they got put into an environment in Iraq where their integrity was really challenged, does the pressure of the war, does that pressure create a divergence in the person's identity?
It can, yes, and I've seen it happen. I'll give you an example. We were on a foot patrol, and I think it was on Optelic 3. And if I'm not mistaken, the operation was called Op Detroit. And that meant that there was basically, we patrolled either side of the streets. We made a hard cordon, as in we stood there, say, 50-odd meters apart, and we had trucks coming through, like bulldozers, and cleaning up the amount of shite that was stored up on the side of the road. I'm pretty sure it's called Op Detroit. That's good memory if it is, right? And what happened is, right in the front of the marketplace, there was my section sort of thing. My platoon commander was a few up, and I was only a private soldier at the time. First tall. A bit edgy at the market. That's where a lot of shady deals go on. They're selling a lot of grenades, handguns. You know what's all going on in there, but it's all a bit backhand. You don't really see it in front of your face. And next thing you know, there's a ruckus in the crowd in front of me, and they're shouting to me, "Mister, Mister." And I step forward, and as I step forward, they part open. There's a shopkeeper in trouble, and he's getting plunged with a fucking half-decent knife. I'd like to call it a machete, right? Yep. But he was getting plunged with this. Now, under the Geneva Convention and the rules of engagement, I'm quite entitled to go ahead and shoot him, because he is a threat to another life. the situation escalated. It came through. I got on the radio and said to close in to the rest of my crew. Stepped forward, cocked it, stabbed him again. I took the safety off and I leaned into it. And I was quite aggressive with my shouting at this point. I wasn't thinking at any point, oh fuck, I'm going to shoot him. He looked at me and stabbed again. That's it. In a lot of people's minds, that would be it. Me, I went, I'm going to have to see this for the rest of my life. And I remember this. I've told this story a few times. And the fact that I've referred to this story a couple of times tells me that I did the right choice because I didn't pull that trigger. Now, I can still remember the look on the guy's face. I can remember the shopkeeper's face. But I don't remember the face of point blank, I'm talking 20 meters of blowing a guy away. And I'm quite happy about that. Now, afterwards, people said, fucking hell, Tomo, you could have had the first kill of the tour. Yeah, not me, mate. I want to sleep at night in 20 years' time. At the time I got it, the older I am and the more I look back on that scenario, I'm so happy I didn't do it. And I'm sure that there's guys that might listen to this now and say, yeah, I get it. I get now that. But for me, I was in such a fortunate frame of mind to think like that at the time because I didn't give a shit if that shopkeeper died or not. That's the truth of it. And even at that age with the adrenaline, I still didn't give a shit if that shopkeeper lived or died because my life was more important in some ways. Like if he turned that knife on me, we'd be having a different conversation right now. But it wasn't. So as that happened, though, let me just go back. As that happened, the guy dropped the knife and the crowd closed in and ushered him and helped him get away. So they didn't really want to get him shot. They didn't really want, I don't know what they wanted. To this day, I don't know what they wanted. Yeah. But they sort of protected him. So we couldn't get our hands on him, couldn't find him, or ushered him off through the crowds of the market. Then I realized I made the right choice. But yeah, that's rational thinking.
So one of the things you said was that some of the other guys, some of your partners, some of the other guys within the troop or whatever it's called, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
They said that you could have got the first kill almost like it was, an admirable thing to do.
And the frame of mind that you've got a soldier in out there, they can't be too rational because you pause, you're fucked. If the wrong situation comes up. I don't think they're crazy to say what they said to me. I get it. Because that's their frame of mind. However, that doesn't mean to say that if they weren't put in that same situation, they'd have reacted the same as me. They might have done. Then again, they might not have. A lot of it can be all talk. Even with soldiers, a lot of shit can be all talk. And they're like, oh, you could have done this. And yeah, you could have. Could have, should have, shouldn't have, didn't. Doesn't matter. And they could have faced that choice further down the line, and I don't know. Maybe they've got stories where they didn't. They did the right thing.
So but you were...
It's easy for them to say on the outside, you should have done this.
Yeah. So you were, in a way, staying true to your beliefs of not doing...
Unknowingly at the time, yeah.
Yeah, unknowingly. And for you to do that means that you didn't step into this false identity, this group constructed identity of, perhaps this a constructed identity around this kind of idea would be to shoot that person, to get the kill, to be the person of glory.
It's not so much the kill. I think it's following rules, right? Okay. So the rules are the rules of engagement are under the Geneva Convention. You can do this and you can do that, and it's easy then to take that and do something stupid, like shoot the guy. Where who's to say those rules are right for that moment in time? Just because they're written by fucking lords or prime ministers and presidents, it doesn't make it right. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Definitely.
And it comes down to moral. What's your moral judgment of that situation? Well, like I said, and it might sound harsh, but I don't give a fuck if that shopkeeper dies. To a degree. It's not worth my life. It's not worth the vivid images I'm going to get when I get out. And I know a lot of boys that I've served with that have got PTSD. And some of them were real tough boys when we were in there, the roughy tufty guys. And then they get in the thick of it because they're the roughy tufty guys. But they've come out with extra baggage, yeah. And maybe they listen to this and then they can relate to it and say, yeah, I get why Tom didn't or why Greg didn't do it. And it's good that I didn't do it because now I don't have that image in my head. Do you know what I mean?
It's awesome. I'm proud of you for making that decision. It's a big thing. But one of the things I'd like to ask you is, this is kind of on the similar topic, but in the media, in the movies, you often see a portrayed image of a kind of boys club mentality.
Yep.
Whenever you're talking about the army, it'd be interesting to know, is that false? Is that idea? Is there any truth from that question? Is there that,
You want to know what
drive?
goes on in the club?
Will I get shot?
Yeah, it's tight. And when I say some of the greatest people you meet or the greatest friends you'll ever make come from the army, I never got that. But then I was always within myself anyway. I used to get up to the ruckus. I used to go out drinking and shagging the birds with all the boys. Don't get me wrong. I was a young man in that environment. There's a lot of testosterone. Off you go. But I didn't make the best friends I've ever had. I've made them outside the army. But yeah, the boys club sort of thing when you're in there, yeah, it is pretty full on. You get a bunch of guys together like that where the rules are pretty slack. There is a level of respect there. The rank comes with earning. You earn respect with a rank, but also people respected each other quite a lot. Like, I hate the word earn respect because that means that you don't respect anyone to begin with. That means that you've just walked into this podcast and I don't respect you. You've got to sit there and earn it. So by the end of this podcast, maybe say, I really respect you. Does that mean I didn't respect you when you came in? You've earned my respect? No, I should respect you from the off. Does that make sense? So to say respect is earned, well, that means you don't respect any fucker.
Yeah. Someone I listened to actually said that. Gary V. Have you heard of him?
No.
Yeah. He says he's basically an entrepreneur and investor with hundreds of millions of dollars, and he runs quite a few online training sessions, and he's actually quite popular with young people, along with Jordan Peterson at the moment. And one of the things he says to run an effective business is to all of his employees, he gives them the top level of respect, and anything after that is declining. So everybody
makes
comes
sense,
into his business. Yeah, it does make sense, and I like that thought. I like that a lot.
So boys did, but then you get people that come in with rank, and obviously you respect that rank because for obvious reasons. But yeah, the boys club is there, it is tight, and when I've been in riots out there, and then you really see how tight the boys are, because it's one in, all in.
Yeah. And
if one of your boys gets taken into the crowd, they're on an orange boiler suit. Next thing, they're on the internet getting their head lobbed off. So it's you stand fast, you stand tight.
Yeah, that's good.
And that's when you see the real camaraderie come in, because the boys take the piss, they banter all the time. They're always winding someone up, or fucking hell, it's tight. It doesn't get much tighter. I've seen it go off in a nightclub in Canada. Right, there's another story for you. We're in Canada, and we just done 6 weeks out on what they call the prairie. Now the prairie is about the size of South Wales, which is back in the UK. Right, it is a vast area. You can go out there and you won't see people for days. And you're out in tanks, shitting in holes, pretending to play warfare. Eventually you all emerge on one spot, and you have this big battle. And you're wearing these vests and helmets, and the tanks are laden up with the same sort of equipment. If you get shot, it says you've been shot in the shoulder, you can no longer use it. The medics come around and treat you as the little computer thing will tell them. You've been shot in the left shoulder, whatever the fuck, and then they can just deal with you. So we did 6 weeks of this, eating rations, right? Then everyone gets to go out on the piss. So we get back to base, head down to the local town. What was the local town called? Medicine Hat, right, in Calgary. Head down to the local town, go on the beer. So you can imagine a squadron of pissed up squaddies, haven't drank in weeks, been eating rations, fucking horny as fuck, half of them, right? Go down there chasing the local women. And the last thing the colonel said to us before we left, as we stood in a circle, he'd walking around congratulating us on the great job that we'd done out in the field. Any sight of trouble, get yourselves back to camp. You're representing the British Army. I don't want to hear of anyone getting in any trouble. Sir, yes, sir. Off we go. We're in a nightclub, and I see a sergeant getting dragged out. Oh, fuck, here we go. Someone had smacked him at the bar. He smacked him back. So the bouncers grabbed the sergeant. Out he went. This guy's mates decided to kick off with the other 2 or 3 guys that he was stood with, not realizing that the rest of the bar was full of soldiers. So one in, all in. And
not the kind of bar.
By the time I got outside, there was cowboy hats everywhere. There was fucking cops everywhere. A helicopter was above. right? Shining a light down. The cops had blocked off either side of the freeway outside this club, and it was just letting this fight go off. And then red dots started coming out. Tasers.
SWAT.
Boys were just flapping on the floor, getting tasered everywhere. But all the soldiers went back to camp, got escorted back by the military police as well. Stood round in that circle again the next morning. Boys had some slings, a couple of boys had black eyes, some teeth missing. And he said, what did I fucking tell you before you went out last night? Blah, blah. And off he went, give us some shit. And the last thing he said was, because he saw it, this helicopter was a news helicopter. Sorry, I missed that bit. So he was watching it back at base, having his cup of tea at night, watching his boys scrapping in town. And he said, the last thing he said was, at least you all stood together, boys, side by side like Welshmen. But he was quite proud of us.
Sounds like a.
So it does run deep.
But do you think
If my if my microphone is still fuzzy, someone let me know, please.
Do you think that kind of camaraderie comes back when you get back to civilization? Is that something that is segmented to the army? And how can we bring that kind of camaraderie to an environment
because the extreme measures of those friendships can't be formed in a society like this. What I've noticed is when I came back, or when I left the army, I just still didn't feel like I belonged because nobody else understood. Nobody else has been and done what I've done. And I don't mean that in any look what I've done at all, because I'm not proud of the reasons that the British Army went to Iraq. I'm not proud of it at all. But nobody gets it. And I know nobody gets it because whenever you talk about it, people are always interested. And there's no real comeback because it's on a realm that people tend to not delve into. Now, there's another reason that I know that it's different, and that's I had a mate of mine from the army, an old sergeant, working with me on my last job. And I hadn't seen him since we'd left the army 10 years ago. So you can imagine the conversation was very military orientated. The stories were coming out and we were reminiscing a lot. And one of the guys that I've known for a few years was working with us. And he was just sat there each night, like loving these stories and mouth open. And he said after, it's like he understands why I do things a little bit extreme now and again, or why I am the way I am. He said, because you've lived at a super duper fast paced, like your work, your life is so on the edge, whether it's the riots, whether it's tours of Iraq and you're sloping down the road with your rifle, it's just on the edge. And now you come back here and it's how do you don't just turn it off. You can never turn it off. Some days you live with it and you can feel like a normal person, and another day some chemical imbalance goes off and you feel a bit, does that make sense? So I don't think you can emulate that. I mean, friendships are strong, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that military friendships are stronger or that they're weaker. They're just different, and they deserve to be different because the challenges that you and your buddies will face are completely different to the challenges that I faced with buddies of mine out there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
They deserve to be different. And yeah, you'd be hard pressed to find someone. But if you ever see two military guys meet, whether they've met each other before or not, you notice straight away that there's a connection and that they'll connect straight away. And
the kind of relationships that you have with your pals over there might not necessarily be something that we want to even replicate in a normal environment, and to good measure. But coming back to talking a little bit about PSD, that is something that has actually had an influence on me, myself, and my family. My father was actually serving in the 10th Light Horse as a reservist, but he actually, he went over to Solomon Islands on his second tour. He went for can't remember how long, but some stuff happened over there that definitely had an influence on him. And actually, I talked to him one day, and he said that the one thing that he regrets was joining the army. And talking to my dad never makes a mistake. He's the wisest man you'll ever meet. He's never taken a step wrong. You know, I'm looking up to this guy who is literally everything to me. A lot of my friends talk about their parents and how broken and how bad the families that they come from. And every time that conversation comes up, I always feel a little bit out of place because I was lucky enough to be raised in such a great environment literally the most ideal environment ever. And I'm very lucky to have that. But to hear my dad say that one of the biggest regrets was joining the army, it always surprised me, and it still confuses me to this day. To see this man who's so self-aware, who's so wise, who's so integral, to see him decaying in the background in some format is.
So he's suffering with PTSD. Then?
Yes, yeah, he is. He's actually a chaplain.
Okay.
So yeah, he was one of the only kind of people that actually got influenced over there in a bad way, which is really surprising. But I won't go into it because it's private for him.
Yeah, so it's his story to tell. Yeah.
Yeah, and but yeah, it is a very big problem, and it's hard to even talk about because there's a very limited amount of people that even go through that kind of thing. And he was in a position where he's meant to be helping people. I'm not sure if you've really talked to many chaplains within the army before, but he's meant to be helping people through this, and he's suffering through it himself. And to see him go through that was really sad.
Yeah.
And to see him be this person that, and he is still the same person that I always thought he was, but to see him going down in a way that I can't even understand. There's no way I could understand to see him waking up, in the middle of the night and he can't sleep, to hear the lamp come on at night. I know something's up, but I can never really understand. And I think that he can't really explain that to me. We've had a few conversations about it, but I'm not onto it at all. I'm pretty off the books with it all. I always think about it, but yeah, it does touch a little bit of a heartstring there. And I think it's something I think I'll have a conversation with him down the track, and we'll be 50 and he'll be 80 and he'll tell me everything of how it actually happened. But until that point, it's a lot of questions, but it's also very crazy for me to think that a man that was that strong could be influenced at such a high level, that what must have went on and what happens overseas must be quite significant, because stuff that has been thrown at him that would throw me right off in this normal environment never fazed him at all. And it would faze a lot of other people, but to hear that he was influenced at such a high degree, yeah, I mean, it's a really big thing, and I think veterans need a lot more support than they get.
Oh, 100%. But yeah, I think all we are as soldiers when we go on the front line are pawns to the elite. You don't. It's usually the guys that join the army, go off to these battles, and I don't mean this in any disrespect because I was one of them, that doesn't do well in school, and somebody sells it to you in the shopping mall or at a careers office that it's a great career, you get to see the world, and yeah, you do get to travel a bit when you're training for the nasties, and then you travel to where the nasties are, and then you see complete disregard for life when you get there. Like I've seen people get executed, fucking murdered, and there's just a complete disregard for life. The family might knock on the camp gate a couple of days later and ask for a couple of $100 in compensation for you killing their 2 kids. Like, they don't really give a shit about their kids dying that much. I wouldn't say at all, but like that much. Just to tell me, we need a couple of $100 to compensate us for that. Fuck you. If someone kicked my dog, I'd knock their head off. If somebody killed my kid.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. Different stages of evolution, maybe. I don't know. A lot of it's maybe down to religion as well. Yeah. But the world, when I say evolution, we're certainly not all on the same level. I mean, the science, technology might be there. They might be walking around with an iPhone in their hand, but then how do some ethnic minorities and religions deal with a few drinks inside them? Some of them just go crazy. They're not developed enough to deal with it.
I guess it depends what you define as developed. I mean, one of the things I've actually been thinking about lately is you look at the Aboriginals,
Mhm.
and a lot of people today would think of them as less developed, as the ideas that they had were not quite as good as ours. But the more I get into this idea of sustainability, I'm studying property and looking into what we're doing to this earth and what effect it's going to create in the next 50 years. Maybe these kind of people, maybe the Aboriginals actually had something.
Well, in that respect,
surpassed us.
110%.
Yep.
Because what we fear what we can't conquer and hate what we don't understand, don't we? The majority of us privileged people. Yeah, sustainability of Australia and the planet would be better off in their hands, wouldn't it? I mean, all we seem to do is kill each other, go hunting, kill lions, kill elephants, and
maybe the lens that we're looking through is the wrong one.
Yeah, 110% behind you on that.
You look at all this, like I said before. We're getting more objects. We're creating wealth. We're creating income, but we're going down and down and down.
We're going into
in
the
a way
murky
that
waters.
we can't even understand. We can't quantify how bad we're going, because on the outside we've created the illusion that we're going up and up and up. I guess it's going to come to a point in the future where
I'm with you 100%, man. Yes,
it maybe even in our lifetimes. Like, that's my idea.
So we're masked by social medias, masked by these devices.
Yep.
Like I see on TV or even on Facebook clips of people who can't afford to send their kids to school, so donate and help someone send their kids to school. But I bet you that parent's got a pack of 20 cigarettes, a 6-pack in the fridge, an iPhone in their hand, telling me that that's more important. And that would be the truth. I bet that in so many circumstances would be the goddamn truth. They've got an iPhone in their hand and that the kids are going without.
Yeah. That's pretty ruthless, hey?
It's brainwashed.
And I guess
we're all brainwashed by it. Even myself, I talk about it quite frequently on here about social media and whatnot, and I'm a sucker for it myself. It's got me.
Yeah.
But
it is.
The first thing of any addiction is to admit it, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
So
all this stuff we're talking about kind of comes back down to the heart of 20 Talk. I talked about the suicides, but that was only kind of a small portion of, where 20 Talk comes from. It comes from this idea that we're using escapism to fill these holes within us. We're creating bridges over crevasses, over big holes, and we're not throwing sand in. We're just putting stuff over it. We're not looking at why we're doing all these sustainable things. For example, we use social media, we use pornography, we use alcohol, drugs, all these different things. They're all products of us not really identifying and knowing who we are and not seeing where we fit on this earth. So we call them the emotional food requirements in 20 Talk. Another one we talk about is relationships, and that is a big one. It'd be interesting to get your opinion on relationships and your friendships. But one of the things that we feel is, as humans, I think we really desire intimacy. If you look at a romantic relationship, I was having a discussion with one of my mentees today, and we were trying to figure out why we kept going back to girls, which we're on this journey of discovering ourselves, but we always find ourselves, trying to get a quick fix or talking to a girl. And I think we figured out that we don't actually want the sex, we actually want the intimacy. So intimacy is a big requirement for us to have, and that transfers over to friendships as well. So one of the core things that we need to do is actually start digging a little bit deeper and sharing and becoming vulnerable with our both with our romantic relationships and with our friendships. And often I hear people say to me, and I had the same thought as well, just over a year ago, why aren't all my friends, sharing with me, and why aren't I in such a good environment where I can just tell them anything and they will challenge me and they will correct me if I go off the path? And one of the big things we learned is the first thing you got to do is, are you actually doing that for these people, and a lot of the times it's no. We're not creating intimacy. We're expecting intimacy, and that comes back down to this idea that we just want. We want everything handed to us, and as an individuals, we don't really have. We're losing the ability to sacrifice and take ownership of our problems. Everything's someone else's problem, and one of the guys that I listen to, and I'm not sure if you've ever heard of him, but his name's Jordan Peterson.
Yep.
Yeah, Jordan Peterson talks a lot about solving problems through the individual. So before we start going out into this earth, before we start telling people how to do things, it all starts with you. Have you got that value? Are you doing that in yourself? Because you'll find a lot of the time that the things that we want are things that we don't even do. And when you do that, it's a very poor foundation to build something positive off.
Give me an example of that.
Well, for example, just like this, like I said, the friendships, we want friendships, intimate ones, and we're too afraid to do that within our current friendship circles. What's another one? I can't quite think of one.
Do you think that's
directly.
a confidence of people afraid of being judged if they open up?
I think so. But I also think
it's never been easy for guys to open up, and the more you look back in history to your granddads and times before that, it was harder and harder for them to open up because that's when men had to be men. Now we seem to be, especially your generation, is starting to come through with another way of thinking.
Yeah.
And that's a form of evolution in a way. Where you have to go through those periods of, like I've spoke to my dad and he said how he gets depressed, but has never mentioned it to anyone. Then once I mentioned it, that I'd struggled a little bit with a few things since coming back, and he opened up to me more.
Yeah.
But he still hasn't, to a degree, especially with everything that we've been through.
That's also.
But it's going to filter down. Does that make sense? Yeah. And your kids will find it easier. By the time you're a grandfather, hopefully, it'll be a lot more acceptable for men to say that, you know, I'm not a solid rock that we used to have to be seen to be. And I think that's what it is. It's a kind of a form of evolution. We're only still getting new to this PTSD thing. It's like Vietnam and stuff was when it really started to get noticed, isn't it? That's fucking recent when you think about human history.
Oh, it's nothing.
Do you know what I mean? It's literally yesterday. Then you had the Iraq syndrome or Gulf War syndrome that it kicked it off again. It's so new. It's not new, but it is in the grand scheme of things. It's like it's brand spanking new. So yeah, it's not uncommon then that this organism that we are feels this for the first time, doesn't feel comfortable opening up about it, but then we're all expected to be able to deal with it or find someone to deal with it. But then that person also struggles with it, and maybe don't. Does that make sense to you?
No,
so we're all still in that learning phase. So your generation really has opened up to it.
Yeah,
it's only going to get better.
Yeah, but I think, you know, like you said, it's growing. But one of the things you got to think about is not just letting your idea that it's going to grow affect how you're going to act in your current environment. So just because you think it's growing doesn't mean you shouldn't be going out there and doing everything you can to make that environment happen, because it's people like us that are actually the ones creating the change. There is a possibility for it to go down if we don't take action within ourselves. And one of the things you were talking about, interestingly, was when you talked to your dad, how when you started talking to him a bit, he just opened up. And one of the things that we've found is guys actually want to be spoken to. Mm-hmm. They want to be heard and they want to have these conversations. It's not the fact that they don't want to have them. It's just...
don't know how to have them.
They don't know how to have them, and there's no one there to just push them over the tipping point and actually ask them. They want to reach out to grab something, but no one's there, you know, throwing a rope down to them. And every time we find that we ask these questions to these people, it simply is just, how are you? And looking them at the eye. Simply is saying, like, what do you want to do with your life? People, you know, these guys haven't been asked that before. and it's so sad in a way, but it's also very exciting in a way, to know that there is a huge market and there's huge potential for young people like ourselves to start asking these questions and to start, taking the caps off these people's lives, because so much wants to get out, but it's just not happening. And, the other night we actually had one of our first girl nights. So we had about 15 girls meet up this Tuesday. Yeah, that's interesting.
That's a whole different dynamic.
Oh, yeah. That is a scary one. They're probably listening right now, so I got to be careful with what I say.
Say no names.
Yeah, no. What I found was actually very similar in what we've encountered with the men. Some of these girls haven't been in an environment where they can share. And when we asked a simple question, why do you want to be involved with 20 Talk? We went around the group. The things that came out of these mouths was crazy. Enough to put me in tears, and I don't really cry that often. So it's
you did
not.
Cry?
I did cry. Yeah. I cried, and right in front of all these girls, and I didn't really, it's embarrassing for me. I was pretty nervous, even having to speak to all of them about stuff that was so close to my heart. But as they went around, boom, 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 they were all saying this stuff, and I was like, well, girls are feeling this just as much as us. They still have all these feelings. They may talk about it a bit more, but there was still pressure in their vessels, and
so why do you think
popping.
Why do you think that we look at it as in women's mental health and men's mental health, and not just as humans? Like, we're all trying to get our way through this life. Why is there such a divide? Why is there a divide when it comes down? I mean, just give an example of like domestic violence. A lot of men are subject to domestic violence, but we still put it's categorized as to men to women, but we all feel the same. A punch in the face is going to hurt me. It's going to hurt a woman. It's the same. Exactly. Abuse is abuse. If I'm abused emotionally by a woman, I'm going to feel just as low as a woman's going to feel if she's emotionally abused by a guy. There's no difference. So why do you think why do we have to separate them? Not we. I'm not saying that we have.
No, we don't. We don't.
But
ideally,
if we all got on the same bandwagon, that team would be twice as strong.
100%. I think,
that's too much
that's
shit.
something we're searching for, and it's an ideal thing, because in the end we're all going through these things. And imagine an environment or a place where we could actually help the opposite sex, and we all came as a group, and we left all of these false ideas behind. We didn't have to think about whether these girls were actually judging us. But yeah, back to your question, I think we've got to bring some dogmatic ideas down, surrounding both genders. And before you bring those walls down, you're not going to be able to have perfect cohesion, because there's going to be obstacles.
Yeah, well, that word perfect doesn't exist anyway.
Yeah.
How about now? How's the sound on that now? Sorry, I keep asking that. But, someone give me some feedback. I think I might have fixed.
Mental health is on so many levels, right? PTSD. If a woman gets it, a guy gets it. It's the same deal.
Yeah.
If they feel stressed about looking at things that are on Instagram, and they feel pressure that way, guys feel it, women will feel it. I don't know. It's the same thing. I just don't know why we have to categorize so many things.
Yeah.
And separate.
You're right. You're right. Honestly, I think
you got women's support group over here and a man's support group over here. I understand that women might not want to talk about these things in front of men and vice versa, but ultimately, fucking hell, guys, just team up.
Yeah.
I think
it's something we should definitely be working towards. But I mean, let's try and picture it like this. What's going to happen if we do create that? Right now, if we put men and women together in a group, what kind of dynamics do you think are going to happen?
Completely different. I think it would, yeah. And I think you'd get you guys and you this, and it would become a little bit tit for tat.
But
I think.
And I was actually having this conversation as well today with someone. There is this kind of idea that's arising that men and women are actually essentially the same. But honestly, from my perspective, we do have some differences.
Yeah, absolutely we do.
We do. So, that might be a reason why we're separating them. For example, guys have. I'm treading in dangerous waters.
We're talking about how women think.
Yeah,
it's always going to be dangerous.
It is dangerous territory talking about the differences between men and women. But, for example, I could probably say that men have a more natural ability to become leaders, and they're better in that regard.
And there's nothing wrong with saying that. Because if you look through history and look back to the caveman days and Neanderthal days, that's exactly what happened. So that DNA is inbuilt.
Yep.
That's why we're different. Women are nesters. Why? It's in their DNA.
Mm-hmm.
It's not optional. There's certain things we don't have a choice over. They're in our DNA.
Exactly.
Who the hell taught my dog to cock his leg and piss on a tree? I didn't. Who taught him to go find shade? I didn't. It's in his DNA. And it's the same with us. We gotta not forget when people tippy toe around what's politically correct to say and what's this and that. Don't forget where we come from, and this is who we are. We can't just change everything because people write up a document and say don't say this and don't say that, and suddenly everyone's got to change. You look at why women might struggle and feel insecurities when they're starting to look at the Instagram post and Facebook post that they're all addicted to. Now, we're not designed to think like this, to have this thrown in our face. This is brand new technology.
Yeah.
And it's overwhelmed us in no time. It's just consumed us. And now you're faced with the challenges that we're just not used to dealing with. Our DNA
100%.
has not adapted. It hasn't grown. Our DNA and our way of thinking hasn't grown as quick as technology's grown over the last 10 years. So it's going to have a negative impact on us in so many other ways.
Yeah. But maybe, that idea you said, how we are different, maybe that does answer your question, why we can't have that cohesion. Men have different tendencies and women have different tendencies. Maybe if you put them together all the time, it wouldn't actually be an ideal environment.
Yep.
So, men have a pressure on them to provide. That's a big thing. I think, and we try to become these, we have like this weight on us to, get a really good job. Whereas, a female might not have that kind of weight.
And why do you think? Look through the histories again.
Yeah, well,
the guys, hunter-gatherers, the guys that go out and they provided the food for the cave, the security for the cave. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
it's still in our DNA to feel that way. And the way that society is now, and they push us down these tracks of you need to go to school, then go to university. Oh shit, you're in thousands worth of debt. Now you've got to go off and get a job. Now you get this job, you're paying your taxes. But how are you going to get to work? You need to buy a car. You're in more debt again. Now you need to start paying that car off. Now you've got to go to work every day. Now you're not really living the life you want to live. Now you're stuck in this trap. And that DNA the whole time is saying, be the provider, be this. But you can't provide it because everything else has got its claws in you. And that's the way society is these days.
Yeah.
You said that really fast.
You must be passionate about it. One of the things that I was actually having a thought about the other day, and I was listening to another podcast, or it was a book or something, and there's a big group of females, that have got kids, and they are feeling like crap because they haven't got these big careers. They're not living up to this idea that, there's a current idea that, women have to be, focusing on a career, entering the corporate realm, doing all these things that men are currently doing. And it's leaving women that are being single mothers, not single mothers, that are staying at home and being a mother. They feel like crap because they're not, getting this career. Yep. And I think it's really sad because I think being a mother is really admirable. Being a mother and looking after a child and raising a child is one of the most important things. But it's becoming less valued as we walk down this road. And I think we need to cast a light onto that and start valuing being like both fatherhood and motherhood, and making sure that they're aware that we do love them and we do think that what they're doing is great. Because I know that I would love to have a wife that would stay home and look after my kid and raise her well. Wouldn't you?
Raise her well?
Oh,
damn, you've been thinking about that one, haven't you?
Oh, no. Yeah, maybe.
No. I don't.
You
I'm
don't think?
37 and I've never had the urge to have children.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why. Every time I speak to Demelza, we pulled ourselves up on this a couple of months ago. We were talking away and planning things for the future and what we'd like to do, places we'd like to go see, so on and so forth. And then she said to me, we never in our plans mention ever having children. Our plans are travel, see things, adventure, live this life. That piece of DNA, maybe, that chemical that would be in someone to want to father someone or to mother someone, it doesn't seem to be there. I don't know in 18 months, in 2 years, if it just appears. I don't know. And I'd never write it off because chemicals are funny. And if someone releases somewhere that says, oh, my heartstrings have pulled on this, fucking hell. But I'm 37 and I've never had the urge to do it. And it's not even something, unless someone brings it up like this, it's not something I usually discuss because it literally is just
doesn't enter the mind.
It's just out there, yeah. It's just not there for me. And it's not something I can help. It's not something I choose. Does that make sense?
Do you ever feel like a pressure to have children?
No, not at all. I don't feel pressure from society too much. Even gym stuff and whatnot, I never had the urge to be aesthetically pleasing to anyone. If I ever went to the gym, it's usually to make sure I can just, if someone says let's go run 10Ks, I'll run 10K. If you want a game of footy on Sunday, I can play a game of footy on Sunday. If you want to go spar up the gym, I can go sparring with you. I don't suffer fitness-wise. I'm not fit enough. I also don't train my ass off to impress anyone or look aesthetically pleasing to the opposite sex. I am what I am, and I literally have got this take me or leave me sort of attitude. Sometimes I could come a little bit too forthcoming with it, but that is me. So no, I don't feel pressure to have children. I don't feel pressure to get married. But I understand that could be quite a selfish thought, because everyone's got the right, I suppose. And it doesn't mean that I'd have to believe in marriage as such. It's not that I don't believe in it, but a relationship, when you asked me about my thoughts on a relationship in passing earlier, marriage to me is a religious act, and I'm not religious. I can see benefits of marriage outside the religious aspect. If you're going into business together, or if you had a kid, all have the same last names. I don't know. Maybe if you wanted to create that family feel. But relationships are weird, and I think it's important to enjoy a relationship for the moments that you're in it, because we all go through life cycles. You might be having a bad day today, but tomorrow it will be over. And we have 5-year cycles roughly in life. Now, if you're with someone and you get that, when you're first with someone, you can't get your hands off each other, right? And that's how that relationship goes. But eventually you grow together and it becomes a bit more meaningful. You have deeper conversations, you get to know each other more. And basically, your lives do this, and they intertwine if you're lucky, because she'll grow, you'll grow, but hopefully you can grow together. Some people, when they say, we've been together 20 years, got married, 3 years later, we got divorced. It's nothing to do with the marriage. It's just those life cycles did this. And eventually, one day, it started to do that. And go away from themselves instead of coming back and intertwining. And that's just life cycles. Sometimes relationships, it's not a fairy tale that we live in. So marriages break up, relationships break up, friendships break up. Families don't talk to families because they just grow apart. We grow as people all the time. Everyone's saying, go out, do what you love doing, grow, develop. You do, but don't forget when you do that, things have to be left behind because not everything grows with you. And it's the same for relationships. So I firmly believe that if you're in a 10-year relationship, make sure that 10-year relationship is good. And it's not a 10-year relationship where you turn around and say, 6 of those years were good, 4 of them were shit. If it's shit and it's been a year, maybe, guys, you're not going to grow back. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that's a reality of humans in a way. I'm not the same guy I was 5 years ago. I'm certainly not the same guy I was 10 years ago. And in 5 years, I'm not going to be the Greg Thomas I am today. In some ways, hopefully I'll be a better version, and everyone around me will grow their better versions and come on the journey together. But you can't live in a fairy tale and say, that's it, it's forever. And be realistic about it, because realism is real change.
Yeah, marriage is a pretty pretty scary thought to think about, isn't it? But for me, it is something I wish to partake in, coming from a religious background.
Mm-hmm.
To me, a marriage is sacred.
Yep.
It is the epitome of love for me. But coming from a non-religious standpoint, I could definitely understand why people look at it at such a negative light. It is a thing.
It's not negative at all. I appreciate people that get married, and good luck to them. I think it's lovely. It's just not for.
Yeah, okay.
It's
Sorry.
not in my. I don't look. I turn up to weddings. Don't get me wrong, and I'm smiling and happy as Larry for them.
Just not right for you.
Yeah, but for me, I'm not going to love you anymore because of that special day.
Yeah.
And you look at weddings these days, how much more of it is about the dress. It's about the cake. It's about the aesthetic things, not that these two people come together and love each other. Now, what would be the difference if, for example, I invited you in 2 years' time to a party that I'm having, because me and Demelza, for example, are going to stand up and declare our love to everyone, and I'll put a significant ring on her finger of some form, but I don't have to sign paperwork and all this. It's just that they still love each other.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I just
sometimes
don't need to go and sign contracts.
Yeah.
I don't need to stand in front of in a church. I don't need to be in a registry office. And
It's actually really interesting to think that why do non-religious people even get married? It is
because it's for the day, isn't it?
Yeah, but why
They
can't
want the
we just
attention.
why can't we separate that? And
Yep.
For me, marriage. I have had a good example of marriage in my life, and from a religious standpoint, when people get married, it's the unison between a man and a woman, and that's a bond. That's the connection that you're developing there. But from a non-religious standpoint, it would just feel like paperwork. It's just a title.
Like someone saying to you one day, "Hey, jump in here, I'll baptize you." What? Why?
Yeah. I think that's why sometimes religion can get a bad name, because there are these dogmatic ideas. There are these things that religion has an influence on that may not necessarily be in the true light of what it actually means. But yeah.
It's a deep one to go into, religion. We'll leave that one for another day.
That is...
Because that's a serious way of... there's a lot of conflicting issues with that one, isn't there?
Yeah, there is, definitely.
Deep.
It is a big vortex you're going into there.
But I want to get off the subject of this anyway. I don't want to drag people down listening to this. Now, you said to me that you came from Curtin University to get here today.
Yep.
Can I ask you quickly a little bit more? Because you mentioned that you want to be a builder or something?
Property developer.
Property developer,
Sustainable.
sorry. Yeah, a sustainable one. That makes...
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I'm a good person, I swear.
Save the world as well. And and everyone on it.
Yeah, so one of the things I do is I'm studying property development at Curtin. Initially, I came into university with a business mind. I'm very business orientated. I love setting up businesses. I've had one before, 20 Talk, which is actually just a clothing business, but I did all right, and I've worked.
Those things is just a clothing business. It is a business. Well done to you.
It is a business, but it has a negative connotation. It's a great foundational business. A lot of people do it, but what I got out of it was not just monetary value. I made a bit of money, but I learnt so much more than I could probably have even learnt at university. So I've always come from a business orientated mindset, and people I'm good at communicating, and I have quite a love for numbers, and I can see how people work. So when you can see how people work, you can usually find a way to monetize that. So I had an idea of entering the business world, and I actually started off studying marketing, and I did that for a year. But as good as marketing is, I didn't think it was right for me. One of the reasons actually why I left my degree is because we had to continuously call people consumers, and I just didn't sit right in my heart to call people consumers. A lot of the techniques and marketing techniques, I actually work in marketing right now, but some of the techniques that people are using are extremely invasive.
Brainwashing as well, isn't it?
Yeah, for example, like this program I'm using at my current job, it can track everywhere a mouse goes when you go onto a website. So I get all these clips of where your mouse goes. creates a heat map of where people click.
Holy shit.
Yeah, it's out there. It's out there. We get all these recordings. And another thing that's out there is I was actually talking to this marketing consultant because I'm working with one at the moment for my work, and he's telling me about a new thing called surge pricing. Do you know a bit about that?
No?
Ooh, you're gonna love this one. So have you ever gone
Surge pricing.
surge pricing?
Okay, go for it. Hit me
Have
with
you
it.
ever tried to book some flights and you realize the price keeps going up and up? I'm not sure if you've ever done that, but anyway, some of these large corporations, they're implementing this thing that tracks your cookies on your internet browser. So if you're entering a website continuously, it can tell, and it automatically starts jacking up the price because it can tell that you really desire that product. So yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah. So every time you want to book flights, book it from a incognito browser.
What's an incognito browser?
It's like a private browser because it can't track your cookies, which is
Holy
like
shit. So if you're
online
constantly searching for 2 months for flights to go somewhere,
oh, yeah.
it'll know.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Motherfuckers.
Mm-hmm.
Big Brother
And
is
all
watching.
All of these big companies are doing it now, and this is the stuff that I know about. Imagine what else is out there. And I've just entered a small part of the marketing world. And a lot of part of the marketing world is good, make no mistake, it's not all evil. It can be used for very good purposes, but just the way that it's getting run in terms of invasion of privacy was something that I didn't really enjoy doing. So yeah, now that you've got that hint, you can save a bit of money for that when you're going to buy a flight. So that's really helpful. But yeah, I started getting into property development. I actually just saw it. I was looking through the Curtin website and I just saw this big list of courses and just caught my eye. That was a thing called property development, and it wasn't promoted at all. It's actually a very small cohort. It's about
So the course is property development. It's not property development and sustainable living. You're adding that bit
no,
yourself.
I'm adding that in. It's
Yep.
property development and valuation. So I'm looking at it through the lens of, creating something sustainable when I come out of it. I want to use the same commercial mindset to implement something that's actually going to positively influence our environment. And I keep saying the word environment, but yeah, I want to create a positive environment, whether that be through mental health or through living, because I think the space that we live in has a big effect on how we think. You look back thousands of years, we were living in villages, we were living in community. We had access to mentors, we had access to people that could teach us. Now we live in little segmented boxes plugged next to each other. And when we want to see someone and we want to, grow and learn, it could only be for like a 2-hour little segment if we go to meet up at a pub or we go meet up at a uni. Back in the old times, you could look over the road and see them right there and they could be teaching you constantly. Now we've created this, segmented living structure that's, this might be a consequence of why we're feeling so bad, because we don't have access to good information. We don't have access to community. We don't have access to people. So one of the things that I want to do is I want to create a community that runs off the environment somewhere down south. So somewhere where people can go. It sounds a bit occulty, and I'm aware that it can sound a little bit like that, but having a place where people will have a little specialty, someone cooks the rice, or someone's the farmer, someone's in charge of the water supply, all those things. It's made with like natural materials like log cabins, shared spaces, shared gardens, places where people can interact and grow. Everyone has the same idea, the same intention, not people living in little cubes that drive to work.
Yep.
It's
minions.
Little minions. I don't want to be a minion. And I think one of the books that actually has got me thinking this way is a book called Brave New World. Basically, it's like this dystopian novel, which it was written like 1930s or somewhere it's like 1932 or something. Anyway, it talks about the future, that we're all put into these little regiments. We all have it's a caste system. So there's like an alpha, bravo, and we're all allotted this certain name, and we have to go through conditioning processes, and everything is just so commercial. And it's that kind of picture that got painted into my head really scared me, because I could start to see people living that way now. You know, when I went to Bali a few weeks ago, I was at the beach in Canggu, and I just looked around, and about 30 people that were around me, probably 25, all of the people that were sitting on the beach were on their phones.
Yep.
Just boop, 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 boop. Now, I'm guilty of it, but we can't keep doing this. We can't walk down this road, because we're feeling empty, and it's only going to get worse if we keep following this technological.
I agree.
And it's really interesting that I'm starting to think this way.
Technological brainwashing bullshit.
Yeah.
A way to get out of it. And I'm going to put this forward at some point and see if we can implement it. At least me and my missus for a bit. See if we can do it.
Yeah.
And that is turn off all the notifications on the phone. From your messenger, to Facebook, Instagrams, my actual text messages, and just leave it. It's not going to buzz. It's not going to beep. It's not going to light up. I don't know. Try it for a couple of weeks. I've done a Facebook before to put it on hold. It's not there. And fuck me, it was refreshing. I was doing things with my time. I wasn't waking up in the morning, and I'm looking at shit. But what it does is it means that I will look at my phone, and I will check that message, and I will check Instagram, and I will check Facebook. I need those little things just to keep this.
Yeah,
going,
exactly.
right?
That,
So
that makes it hard in that way.
But I do it under my terms when I have the time to do it, not because it's buzzing. How many times have you spoke to someone, and then they go, "Oh yeah," and they're talking to you and they're texting away on their phone? The only person that matters to you right now is me. I'm sat right in front of you. Put the fucking phone away.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Unless it's an emergency. But if it was an emergency, somebody would call you.
Yeah.
Text you to tell you your cat stuck up a tree.
Yeah.
They're going to call you and say, "Hey, listen, mate, this has happened."
Yeah.
So notifications off, and start that way to wean yourself off, because it's like a drug. You have to be weaned off.
And we talk about it in our 20 Talk program. It's an escapism measure that we go through. Another thing that I heard recently was that people are starting to buy these old cell phones, and they're starting to connect their SIMs into them and totally disconnect. So the only means of accessing people is through phone calls or texts, and they've got these little brick phones that they carry around with them. No social media, no apps, no tracking, all these other things.
Yeah. It's a scary one, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. You know, you've got those other issues. You know, they could be tracking.
Man, there's a lot of stories about why we've got these phones and why they're so as developed as they are. It's not all about the visual stimulus, which has us now addictive. It's a lot of it is tracking. A lot of it is, dare you say, the facial recognition.
Yep.
It's all a little bit frightening that they can recognize your face. You take a snap. Like Snapchat hasn't made any money. It's a deficit, but somehow it keeps going. But it's taking photographs of everyone's face. They think it's nice, cute, putting a little bunny ears on themselves. That information is being taken somewhere. The phone now has fingerprint technology. These motherfuckers have got all your information.
Yeah.
Everything. You bank from that phone. It knows what you look like. It can recognize your face itself now when you look at the screen to unlock itself. It's got your fingerprints. It's got your bank details. Knows what you like. It's following your cookies, like you say. It knows every bit of porn that you watch. It knows everything that you're searching for. You talk about something in a room, the next thing you know, an advert will pop up on Google or Facebook. And the frightening thing about that is they just admitted that part of it on the news, that the microphone in your phone is picking up information that you're saying, and a computer source somewhere detects certain words, and those certain words come back as adverts. They come out on the news and they tell us this. And the frightening thing about it, nobody gives a shit. Yeah. There's no uproar about it. If somebody peeks in your bedroom window at night, you're going to have a heart attack. Some woman is going to scream. There's some fucking pervert out there looking through my window. But everything about you, every selfie, every titty shot that she's taken and sent to her boyfriend, someone else has seen it. And nobody gives a shit.
I wonder why we don't give a shit.
Suppressed enough beforehand to not give a shit before they even let it out. It's there's a bigger picture
The
to
New
it.
World Order. It's the Rothschild.
Mate, that's a whole other podcast.
Globalization.
It goes crazy, but there's a lot of truth to some of it, and there's no
Yeah.
smoke without fire.
I think you're right. There is something out there. There is something that is beyond what we may be able to comprehend.
Yep.
A lot of figureheads coming out of America. Hillary Clinton.
Oh shit, we're gonna get off.
No. Yeah, I think one thing to think about is, we're never going to be able to know, but it's just great to have an idea, and it's great to have a perspective on why all of these things are eventuating the way they are, and we can live in our own little bubbles.
Yep.
And not live in those terms. So that's another reason why I kind of want to live off grid and live away from all these things, all these pressures, all of these ideals that are not necessarily true. I just want to
the off-grid thing is good. I just want to touch on that quickly when you were on about that village. It's going back to like the sapien days, and what it gives everyone in that village a purpose. If that person's in charge of the water, that's their purpose.
Mm-hmm.
If they're in charge of hunting gathering, that's their purpose. If they're in charge of the fire, that's their purpose.
Yep.
And it's having a purpose, like you said at the beginning of this, is what people need. If that's in the DNA.
Mm-hmm.
100% that's in the DNA.
Mm-hmm.
And what you're doing there is providing it, hoping to provide it.
Yeah.
And I can see the logic behind that to what you said at the beginning.
It is an idea. A lot of these ideas behind creating these eco villages and these not really communes is it looks good on the outside, but when you're put in an environment where you've got people there and you have to see them all the time, and your solar powers breaks, or your composting doesn't work, or things will go bad, and it sounds a lot better than it is. So that's one thing you got to think about. The life living off grid is not as good as it sounds.
Trials and tribulations to everything.
Yeah.
Ups and downs. A certain individual will be drawn to it. Others will be repelled by it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the beauty of having choice, isn't it?
Exactly.
So it would draw the people that are meant to be drawn to it.
Mm-hmm.
The people that's not.
Yeah.
Will never even hear of it. It won't even be in their realm.
Mm.
But there you go. Man, what you're doing is remarkable. And I don't mean to be degrading if I say as a young man doing it is I take my hat off to you. I think you've got a hell of a head in your shoulders.
Cheers.
And I look forward to seeing where you go in the future, because I think you've got a good future ahead of you, man.
Cheers, man.
Listen, if anyone wants to get in contact with 20 Talk, hear more, or reach out. I don't know. Where can they find you, mate?
You can either send us a message to our Instagram 20_talk, or personally send me a message, and I can either get you in contact with myself or one of our mentors. We've got 8 mentors. And if you're a female as well, I can get you in touch with a good couple of girls that will be able to just journey with you, talk to you, help you through life, and just hear you out. Because, you may be in a position right now where you're thinking about going to a counselor or a psychologist, and you're not quite ready for that. And maybe you just want to be heard. And honestly, we're here for you no matter what. So don't have any kind of obstacle in your mind. We want to hear you no matter how big your problem is or how small your problem is. Come to us and we'll sort something out for you.
Beautiful. Leighton, it's been an absolute pleasure, buddy.
Cheers for having me,
And,
man. You're doing good things.
Thank you very much.
Great.
Hopefully somebody can benefit, even if it's one person. Guys, thanks for listening. The podcast will be out for those that are listening on Facebook, on Instagram. Wrong, it's not going on Instagram. iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, all the usual places. Leighton, again, mate, pleasure. Thank you very much.
Cheers
Thanks for
having
listening,
me.
guys.
Bye.
Don't say anything derogatory. We're still online.